Welcome to 24 Hours of Past, the SQL Server 2014 edition. We're excited you could join us today for Damadi Commerce session on private and hybrid cloud features in SQL Server 2014. This 24 Hours of Past event consists of 24 consecutive live webcasts. For session schedules and other updates, please refer to 24hoursofpast.com. My name is Julie Cosmano, a consultant at Love Support Solutions. I have a few housekeeping slides before I hand over to Damadi Komo. He will speak for about 40 to 45 minutes, followed by Q&A time where you can ask him questions you may have. Damadi, could you please move on to the next slide? All right, please raise your hand using the hand icon on the right-hand side of your screen if you have any issues, and someone will assist you. To maximize your screen, use the screen button located on the top of the presentation window. As all attendees are muted, you can ask questions on the questions pane, which is located on the right side of your screen. Once we get to the Q&A portion of the session, I'll read off your questions to the speaker. There'll be a short evaluation at the end of the session, so please take a moment to complete it as your feedback is important to us. It will show up on your screen. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to take a moment to thank our event partner, Microsoft, one of our global sponsors. The staging of 24 Hours of Past would not be possible without their support and dedication, and they are the reason this event is available free of charge. Next slide, please. Next, I'd like to bring your attention to the upcoming PASS Summit. Taking place in Seattle, Washington from November 4th to 7th, PASS Summit 2014 will feature over 200 sessions with world-class SQL Server experts. Planned and presented by the SQL Server community for the SQL Server community, PASS Summit is single-handedly the largest gathering of SQL Server and BI professionals. With over 5,000 attendees from all over the world, PASS Summit is also a great place to network and meet face-to-face with experts, peers, and MVPs. More importantly, PASS Summit delivers on providing you with the answers to your SQL Server issues, along with the knowledge, strategies, and skills you need to stay ahead of the curve. Contact your local chapter or virtual chapter for a discount code to save $150 off. Optimize your savings by registering before this Friday, June 27th. To find out more about PASS Summit, please visit www.passsummit.com. Next slide, please. And now please allow me to present Speaker of the Hour, Damadi Komo. Damadi, over to you.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you for everyone to join this 24-hour PASS session. So quickly about myself. I'm here working in Redmond, Washington, in US, part of SQL Server marketing team. I've been focusing on SQL Server for the longest time, more than 10 years. First in the field, meaning that helping our salespeople selling SQL Server as a technical resources, and then subsequently I moved to Redmond, the headquarters, handling the marketing of SQL Server. And very happy to talk to you today essentially about the SQL Server 2014. SQL Server 2014 has many features, and today we're going to focus primarily on the private and hybrid cloud features. And it's going to be a very demo-heavy session today, so I'm going to show you a lot of the features, just one slide on each feature and then show you the demos after that. Essentially, since it's a hybrid and private cloud features, and we're going to talk about a lot on Windows Azure as well. All right, so make sure that you note that Windows Azure is basically our premier cloud offering here, and we're going to continue to advance this moving forward. All right, so let's get started. The first one I want to cover is a high-level view of how we can see our data platform offerings. So we will see a lot of the commonality across all these different environments, starting from traditional non-virtualized environment to private cloud to actually the cloud, whether it is Microsoft Cloud in Azure or third-party cloud as your service provider. Right, so we'll look at all these three environments, And I want to make sure that you understand that all this environment can run SQL Server very well. So whether it's running SQL Server on Windows Server, running in Windows Server, Hyper-V as well on the on-prem perspective, as well as when you run it in our Microsoft Cloud Azure, you can run the entire SQL Server in our Azure virtual machine. There's other services that are actually making use of SQL Server technology as well. I'm just going to name some of them, like Hadoop on Windows Server, APS Appliance, SQL Database Services, the HD Insight, which is the Hadoop implementation in the cloud, Power BI, which is our BI in the cloud as well. So all those are using the same underlying technology. What I want to stress out is the ability to use a single or common tools across all these three environments, whether you're running in traditional, whether you're running in private cloud, whether you're running in a public cloud environment. You use the same development tool, same management tool, same identity like Active Directory, same virtualization stack using Hyper-V. Essentially, you have one single vendor to offer you this. And this is our unique offering to the marketplace where no other vendor can do this as well as us, where we can give you that. And later on when I show you the SQL Server 2014 features, we actually bake a lot of these functionalities that will allow you to run SQL Server on premises or in the cloud inside SQL Server tool itself. So you'll see that. Okay, so dig a little bit deeper. These are the features of SQL Server 2014 that we'll be covering. It's quite a number of them, starting from sysprep to buffer pool and extension to online database operations to resource governance on I/O, and then we'll move to the hybrid cloud portion, which is the backup database to Azure, the encryption of the backup. We also have the management. We have as well as running SQL Server data files in Azure storage. So all those will be clear once we go through this, but I just want to give you a highlight of what we're going to cover today. There are many, many features. Because of time, let's just dive in. The very first one that I want to talk about is the sysprep portion. Right? Sysprep is nothing new. It's been around for a long time, starting with Windows Server. And SQL Server supports sysprep as well. However, we support it in a limited fashion before, and with SQL Server 2014, we actually support a lot more, especially the whole surface of SQL Server, right? In fact, in SQL Server 2012, if you install SP1, the latest cumulative update, starting with CU2, you actually have the sysprep enhancement of SQL Server that allows you to sysprep not only the database engine and reporting services, but also the analysis services, integration services, and share features. What's new in SQL Server 2014 is the ability to sysprep the entire cluster. Right? So if you have failover cluster set up and you want to sysprep those so that you can deploy in many, many places in the private cloud environment, this is the way to go. Right? Sysprep is a technology that allows you to pre-install a whole bunch of SQL Server bits, and when you deploy it, all the bits are already pre-installed. You just need to deploy it, and then there is a post-installation to configure based on the actual machine that you, or VM that you actually deploy to. It's very, very easy to use. It's part of SQL Server setup in the advanced selection that you can look at all kinds of options to do sysprep. Okay. The next one that we want to go through is the buffer pool extension. Okay, it's new in SQL Server 2014. This allows us to extend essentially SQL Server buffer pool to a disk-based solution. In this case, since it's buffer pool for SQL Server, you want to make sure that it's fast. So we would recommend you to put it in the drives such as SSD, which is quite common today. that you can extend the existing buffer pool there. The main benefits is very obvious. You improve the query performance, and it's mainly for OLTP usage or transaction processing workload, read mostly, OLTP. And since we want to make sure that there's no data loss when you extend the buffer pool to SSD, because the drives could go away at any time, things like that, so we're going to only move the clean pages only. The in-flight transaction pages are still kept in the main memory. They're running in the regular RAM, but the most frequent query pages, things like that, we'll move it to the SSD. And it's very easy to configure, as you can see here on the chart. The buffer pool now, if you turn on the buffer pool extension, the dirty page or the in-flight page will still be in the RAM, it shows on the red portion. Only the clean pages are going to be moved to SSD. And the configuration is also quite straightforward. You just need to issue a command called alter server configuration, and to set the buffer pool extension to on and point it to the right drive, and specify how much disk space that you want to extend those, and that should be good. And it can be done online, so you don't have to shut down SQL Server. Right? So to demo that, let me quickly switch to my demo screen here. So I have a demo environment here where I have all kinds of demos that I'm going to do today. The first one I want to do is the SSD buffer pool extension. Let me bring it up the script here. Hopefully you can see quite clearly the size, everything. Let me see if I can extend the size a little bit. Okay, so first of all, I also have a simulator that we put together based on the lab testing of various baseline. Okay, so let me click on the baseline and then start the benchmark here. So without SSD, I'm running about close to 1,500 transactions per second that I'm showing here. So what I'm going to do is to turn on the SSD buffer pool extension and put it in the folder called C data. So if I go to my C drive data, you see there's nothing there. There's no file there, right? So what I'm going to do is to just issue this alter server command and execute that. It says command completed successfully. If I shift back to my data folder, you see that there's a file which has the 20 gig file that is being created to extend my buffer pool to that, because I specified to be 20 gig here. Okay, so with that, you can actually see also there's a DMV that you can see whether or not it's successful. I can also zoom in, let you see. It says that says it's enable, it's in this particular path. It says enable here. So you can actually see using the DMV to see the configuration whether it's there or not. Okay, and then let me switch back to my simulator. So with my buffer pool extension is on, let me start the benchmark again. And this time I've got about 2,800 transactions per second. And compare that with the previously, I'm getting almost 2 times performance without doing changes in my apps. I just need to do this alter server configuration, buffer pool extension equal on. So it's very easy to do this. In fact, you can do it online, I mentioned. There's also another place that you can see whether or not your pages are being used or not by issuing this descriptor. it will show you whether or not your data page is in the buffer pool extension or not in this column. Right? If it's 1, it means it's there. If it's 0, it means it's not there. So it's very easy for you to monitor. Right. Turning it off is also the same way. It's very easy. You just issue the same command, except that you set it to be off. Right. So if I run this, it's okay. Then if I go back to my C data drive, that file is being deleted. So it's no longer being used. But since it's only putting the clean data, as I mentioned earlier, you don't lose any transaction, not losing any data there. Okay. So that's the buffer pool extension. Let's move on to the next one, which is the online database operations. What we're trying to do is to want to make sure DBA has more or greater control in terms of how they want the transaction to happen when they want to do things like online index operations, because there's a lot of segmentation in different partition, or if you want to do partition switching in data warehouse operations, you can do it and you have more control to it. So instead of have to wait until all the transaction is being done, you have an option to either kill all the transactions. We can do it today with SQL Server 2012, but you have to go to each of the transactions, each of the blocking transaction, and then kill each one of them. In 2014, we allow you to better manage all this thing, right? So it's very good for DBA, and I would assume that this will become their favorite feature in SQL Server 2014 because it allows you to have better control on how things run. So to do that, let's also do a demo on this. Let's switch back to my demo screen here, and then we get to the right files. So I have two scripts. I have the main script and I have the index. So what I'm trying to do here, as I run through it, let me just restore the database quickly first. What I'm trying to do is to show that there are fragmentation in one or many of my partition, and I want to do online index operations, and I want to use this new feature to be able to control those. So I finished restoring my database here. First thing is to show you the fragmentation. All right, so I might execute this one. This script to just list the fragmentation. If I zoom in this column, you see there we have many partitions in this database, but then the fragmentation is huge. Right, so you have 40% on partition 1, you have 20% here, you have 60%, and so on and so forth. Right, so we have many fragmentation. So one of the things that I want to do as the DBA is to do online index operations on this thing. But before that, let me simulate somebody's running something on that particular partition. And this one essentially is just going to run indefinitely because I never do a rollback or commit on the transaction, right? So it's continuing to run, it's blocking, right? So if I run this alter in partition, this will just sit forever because this is will be blocked by the previous transaction that I was doing, right? So I'm going to cancel this, right? What we can do here, let me issue this thing and I explain what this is. In 2014, there is a way to control how I can rebuild the index on specific transaction partition with these new parameters that I'm highlighting here. Right. So you see here, the very first one, it says wait at low priority, max duration equal 1. That one is meaning that I want to wait to do something for 1 minute. 1 it means 1 minute. That's the unit number here. You can be 1, 2, 3, or 60, 120, whatever it is that you want to put there. That's how long you want to wait. And then on this side is when you finish the waiting, in our case 1 minute, what are you going to do? So I have three options here the one that I'm executing right now is called blockers, meaning that after I wait for 1 minute, I'm going to kill all my blockers, the one that that I ran earlier, and issue this online index rebuild right away. Or I can have an option to abort myself this online index rebuild, or I should say none, meaning that it will be behaved exactly the same behavior as SQL Server 2012. Right, so I have three options here. Right, so after 1 minute, which is here, so it's been run for 1 minute already, right? You'll see here that it says command completed successfully. But since I specified that I will kill all the blockers, means that the fragmentation should occur. So if I go here and execute this to look at the fragmentation, you see that indeed the fragmentation in here has dropped from like maybe 20% or 40% to now less than 1%. Right. So this is a way for you to control it better. Right. So let me clean up this thing and switch back to my slides. The next one I want to talk to you about is I/O resource governance. Right. Essentially, this is a enhancement of a feature that's already been there in SQL Server, I believe 2008, where you can set the minimum and maximum for both CPU and memory to slice that to guarantee performance, because you can have multiple SQL Server applications that's running on that same instance, so you want to make sure that you have better isolation, you want to guarantee performance and all that. In SQL Server 2014, we allow you to do that plus the I/O portion. So now we can cover CPU, memory, and I/O. It's very good for multi-tenant workloads, and it's very popular for our hosters as well. People who host SQL Server to multiple customers, they want to make sure that they can guarantee performance on that. To show you that there's a chart that on the right side that essentially show what it is. So essentially we allow you to create multiple pools inside resource governance. In the chart on the right side it says there's a pool 1, pool 2, and pool 3. Each one of them has its own slice of CPU, memory, and I/O, and we can slice them and we can attach multiple apps to different pools, essentially guaranteeing that the pool will not will be isolated. It will not disrupt the other pool. So pool 1 will run by its own. Maximum CPU can be used is 20%, memory is 10%, and I/O is 30%. And we're attaching one apps to that. And it will never run beyond that 20%, 10%, and 30%. Right? Same thing with pool number 2 and pool number 3. Right? This is how we can isolate those to guarantee performance. So you can see that multiple apps can run and can be attached to different pools, and it will behave in a certain way according to your settings on the CPU, memory, or I/O limitations. Right? So to show you that, I also have a demo. So let me switch to my demo screen here and bring up the right demo script. So I want to make sure if I can clean up something. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do here is to create two pools. I'm going to simulate two different pools and attach two different apps to it and then see the behavior. And I'm just going to create a resource pool workload. This is standard way of doing resource governor. There's nothing new here in 2014. I'm going to show you something new later on. I'm going now creating the function classifier and attach that to the resource governor and then set it to a default value. There's nothing to it. This is exactly what we're going to do. We're doing in SQL Server 2008. Now I'm going to run another simulator, a demo app here. Move it to this side. So this app simulates two customers. One is customer 1, one is customer 2, and attached to different pool number 1 and pool number 2. Has 16 threads each, so essentially the same apps. If I run it on both sides, I click start on those, and you'll see at some point you'll get to a same equilibrium, which is almost 3,000 transactions per second. Right? But we all know that not all applications are the same, so everybody is different. So let's say if I have customer 1 that changed my app to, let's say, 32 threads, and I restart this thing. And since I have not implemented any resource governor limitation here, customer 1 is actually eating a lot of the IOPS in this case. Even though it's, maybe they're paying the same amount of money, but there's no way for me to guarantee performance here. So one is running about 3,000, one is running about 1,500, 1,700 transactions per second. Right. So one good way for me to do it is to set the IOPS. Right. So there's a parameter called minimum and maximum. You can set it to as whatever numbers that you want. So in this case, if I set it to, let's say, let me just to 100 and then 50. So I'm going to set resource pool 1 to only maximum is 100, so I can just run this. And then if I flip back to my the apps here, you'll see that the customer 1, since I set it to just 100, in this case it translates to almost like 200 TPS. It will not go beyond that, even though the server that I have here can do more than 120, 180 TPS, right? So I immediately set the maximum limit there, right? And let's say if customer 2 is paying less than customer 1, and now he's running about 5,000, 4,000 some transactions per second, which is a lot, and I want to cap that to even less, so I would just issue the second statement here to just cap it to 50. If I switch back to my application here, you see that essentially customer 2 now is being capped to half of customer 1 according to their SLA, the level that they subscribe to it. So that's how you can quickly limit the IOPS on this. It's a very simplified demo. I only worked on the IOPS portion, and I didn't do anything on the CPU and memory. But assuming you can do it the same way in SQL Server 2014, it's just to show you the effect of can do this settings dynamically. You can change this parameter dynamically as well. All right, so that's resource governor. Let me close all this thing and switch back to my slide. Okay, the next one, we're going to switch gear to hybrid cloud. Essentially, we want to show you a few features on hybrid cloud as well that is completely baked inside SQL Server. The first one to show you is backup database. Right? We all, as DBA, doing backup regularly, whether it's scheduled or manual. Hopefully, you guys can do it scheduled. In this particular one, we actually ship this particular feature in SQL Server 2012 Service Pack 1, the command line version, so T-SQL version, right? So allow you to essentially back up and restore any of your SQL Server databases to the cloud, to Azure Blob Storage, right? So we have many, many ways to do it. The very first one that's shown on the bottom here is the T-SQL version. Essentially, you need to create a credential that allows you to get into your Azure storage, and then you back up your database. Instead of back up to device, to this, whatever it is, now you're backing up to a URL with your credential, the Azure credential that you created. Everything else will be the same, right? Except now you're backing up to a URL address, which is your Azure storage, right? You can do it in T-SQL. You can use SMO. You can also do it using PowerShell, right? And then, in fact, we also allow you to do it through the UI, right? I'm going to demonstrate that to you shortly. With that, we also released in 2014 backup encryption that allows you to create a credential, security certificate, for example, that allow you to encrypt your backup files, right? So in the past, you want to encrypt your backup, you need to turn on TDE or transparent data encryption. In SQL Server 2014, you don't have to anymore. You can just use this backup encryption tool. It's a feature that a lot of customers have been asking for, and we're shipping it in 2014. Okay, so let's show you the backup to the Azure in the demo. Okay, so I have here my demo environment again. Let me go back to my backup encryption. So what I'm going to do is first create a simple database. There's nothing to it, just a simple database here. And then I'm going to insert some rows essentially to that secure database, and here you go. You can see the result. Right, about 3 rows here. And then I'm going to be able to back up. The regular backup is like this. There's nothing to it. It's just the regular backup. So you can back it up to a file, no problem. But in order to back up to Azure, right, I need to create a credential. Okay, so I need to create a credential that points me to my Azure storage. Okay, how you can see that? Azure storage, one way to show it to you is to bring up IE here. Let me see if I can log into my Azure account. So this is my Azure portal. If you play with Azure, you see the similar portal here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the storage. Right, I'll click on the storage. Okay, in this storage on the left side, and you give me a list of all my storage. And the one that I'm interested in is this guy over here. That's the storage account that I want to back up my database into. Okay, so I click on that. Right, in here, there is a place where you can have your access key. Essentially, it's like a password for you to get to your Azure storage. Right, if I click on Manage Access Key on the bottom here, right, you'll see that I have my storage account with primary access and secondary access keys. A very long key, and things like that. Okay, so I can use that to get to my storage account. And inside my storage account, I have this concept of containers. Essentially, it's like a file folder. So I have here 4 containers or 4 folders: backups, data, disk, and BHD. I'm going to back up my database into the backups folder. Okay, so you can look at this as well. Right now, if I click on it, there's nothing in there. Okay, so that's one way to look at it. But we actually give you a better view of that within SQL Server Management Studio. So if I go here and do a connect, there's a new thing called Azure Storage that we bake in there at SQL Server Management Studio that essentially allows you to connect to your Azure storage directly from your SQL Server tool, right? And you connect to it, specify the storage account name and the key that you can copy from your Azure portal, right? And click connect. It will give you the same containers. The 4 containers that I showed earlier on Azure portal, you actually can see it now in SQL Server Management Studio. It's a very, very cool feature that we are very proud that we bake it in, that you don't have to leave SQL Server Management Studio to do this thing. Okay, so first I'm going to go back here to my script, create my credential. Let me go back to my master and create credential. Okay. Now, next one is I can just back up my database directly, and instead of oh, this one is using backup. Okay. Before that, I want to create the backup encryption certificate. Forgot that step because we're going to demo that as well. So I'm going to create a backup encrypted certificate. Let me go back here and run the script again. So this time around, instead of pointing it to a disk, I'm pointing to the URL. And I give it a name and everything. And you saw that the backup actually completed. It's very, very fast, right? And you can see the results. Since I back it up into the backup container, backups container in here, I can right-click click on that, and you see the backup file is here, right? If I go back to my storage here in the Azure portal and click on backup, you should see the exact same files. Right, so whether you look at it from Azure portal or inside SQL Server Management Studio, you get exactly the same thing. Right, so those are the files there. Right, so it's very easy to do that using the command line tool, using the T-SQL. You can also run it through a UI. So we bake it the UI as well. So let's say if I want to back it up the MDW database, I will right-click on MDW. Under Tasks, Backup, which is very similar to SQL Server prior versions. If I click on that, it will bring up the Backup Database dialog box. There's nothing different, except that now I have an option. Instead of backing up to disk, I can now back up to URL as well. Right? So you see that there's a backup to disk and backup to URL selection. So I select backup on URL. Since I already created the credential, I select my credential, the one that I just created, and point it to the backup folders, right? And then specify the file name, right? So I need to just specify the file name using my credential in the right container, okay? And then if I want to do backup encryption, I will click on the backup option. Okay, and then here there's a selection called Encrypt Backup at the bottom, and I can select all kinds of different algorithms to use, and using the certificate that I have. Right, so you can have an Encrypt Backup checkbox, which is new, and the algorithm and certificate that I have created. Okay. And if I click OK, it should be able to do the backup. And when it's done, it will say, OK, backup successfully, OK. I can just go back here and refresh my containers in Azure Storage. I should see another file, which is my MDW database backup. Or, of course, you can go back here and then do a refresh on your Azure portal. You should also see the two files that that I just have the backup on. Okay, so it's the same way. So whether you run it in Azure Portal or you run it in SQL Server Management Studio, you get exactly the same thing. Okay, so that's backup to Azure. Of course, you can tie this with your scheduler and things like that in your under management that allows you to schedule this thing in a certain period of time. You can back up differential, you can back up full, back up transaction, whatever that you normally do is actually the same. Right? The restore database is also the same. So we back in the restore as well. If I want to do a restore database, I would right click and do a restore database. Right? In here, I would click on device. And instead of restoring from a file, now I can restore to a URL, right? So that's new in SQL Server 2014, right? So I select the URL, I click Add, and this is where you specify again your credential, which is your storage account and storage account key and all that, right? Since I already have that, I can click Connect to it. Maybe I get to the wrong credential, okay? Connect to it, and then the same container list will be here. And if I select the backups, those are the two backup files that I just did earlier. and you can just select those and go to the same restore operations that you normally do in SQL Server. So I'm not going to do that because it's the same exact procedure. I just show you how to connect to it. Okay, let me cancel out of that. And that's our demo for backup database to Azure, right? You can do it manually, or you can do a schedule on that. Okay. We also ship with 2014 managed backup database to Azure as well. That allows you to automatically back up the database that you have in your entire instance. You can do it from instance level, or you can do it from a database level. Right. This one requires for you to run SQL Server agent, and SQL Server will manage all this thing automatically. Why you want to do that? Because there are many places, many installation of SQL Server that requires a lot of the, what do we call that, a branch office scenario where you have SQL Server installed in many places, but you don't necessarily have DBA in there to manage the backups. So you can set up this thing one time, and SQL Server will automatically do this for you. You just need to specify which database that you want, which storage URL, which is your Azure storage, and how many retention days. And SQL Server will do this automatically in the background, and it's very minimal interruption. It's not going to affect the operations of SQL Server at all, right? And to show that, I'm going to switch back to the demo. And if you look at it, it's very easy to do it. Essentially, first of all, you need to have your SQL Server agent running. That's one. Okay. And then you need to just issue one of these commands. Either you issue this command where you says backup particular database, in this case MDW, and point it to the right storage URL in here, and how many retention days using the credential that you created for Azure storage. That's it. You just issue it one time, and you're ready to go. It will, in the background, kick off the SQL agent job and all that. You'll determine when to back up and things like that. Okay. There's another thing that we put in here is sometimes you want to back up the entire instance. So in this case, you don't specify any database. You just specify the entire instance. So in this case, you run this store procedure here to do entire instance backup. And the same parameters applies, which storage URL, how many days of retention, which credential, things like that. So it's very easy to set up. This one is the most user-friendly. You just set up one time. You back up any new databases that you will be creating in the future, and it will be able to back it up automatically without you to specify those. It's really hands-free method of backing up your database to Azure storage, right? We also bake in a besides T-SQL, we allow you to do it in the Management Studio as well, the UI. Right. Under the management pane here on the left side, you see there's a managed backup node that we just created for SQL Server 2014. If I do a configure, it will give you exactly the same UI here. Right. So you can click on enable those, how many days of retention, using what credential that points to the right storage account. You can also do encrypt backup like before, so you can enable those in the UI as well. So you can do it either in the UI or T-SQL for managed backup. Very easy to do, right? So let me close this and go back to my slide. Okay, so we know that a lot of customers, in fact, majority of customers are still evaluating SQL Server 2014. And a lot of you are running SQL Server 2012, 2008 R2, 2008, or 2005. In order for us to encourage you to back up your database to the cloud with your existing version of SQL Server, we actually ship another tool. It's a free downloadable tool as part of SQL Server 2014 release. Allows you to actually download this tool and install, and then be able to back up your previous version of SQL Server to the cloud as well. right? And let me show you how it's done in the demo. Okay. So what I have here is a configuration. First of all, when you install the tool, it's going to run as a service. Right? It's called Microsoft SQL Server Backup to Windows Azure Tool. You need to make sure that it's running. It's a service that's running in the background. And then there's a configuration. If I click on the configuration, let me step through it so I can show it to you. So it behaves like monitoring. It's like to monitor a specific path, right? So in this case, I would specify that you monitor this path, Azure backup path, and whatever file pattern, right? So whenever you back up your SQL Server, if you back up to this folder with this file pattern, then this tool automatically bring those and then put those in the Azure storage, right? The next screen here, either you put it in local storage or you do it in the Azure storage. My Azure storage account name, my access key, the containers, right? I can also verify that I can connect to it and then click next. And this is where you specify whether or not you want to do encryption or you want to do it compression as well. Okay, so that's how you set up. You can set up many line items here, and this is just the first one that I set up. And let me just try to connect to my older version of SQL Server. I have R2, 2008 R2, and I have one database here that I want to back up. Okay, so let me back it up, do a task backup. And since this is 2008 R2, I cannot back up to URL. I only have way to back up to this, right? So this is nothing. This is exactly what you have in your environment in 2008 R2, right? And then I can specify different backup options, media option, and all that. It's all the same. If I click on, let me make sure that the file is not there yet. In my C drive, Azure backup. Well, let me delete this. So there's nothing here right now. If I do a backup, should be done very quickly because it's a small database. And then the backup file is there called adlt.bak. Okay, if this this program runs as advertised, then it should take this file and we'll move it to the Azure storage. So let's verify that in my container here. If I do a refresh, in fact, you see there are two files here that's been created. And let me expand a little bit. There are two files. One is the stub, and one is the actual backup files. Right. So that's how you do it for previous version of SQL Server. You can also see it from the Azure portal as well. Essentially allows us to support backup to Azure storage from your previous version of SQL Server, starting from 2005, 2008, 2008 R2 to 2012. Of course, if you have 2014, all this thing will be baked into the SQL Server Management Studio. But if you have prior version of SQL Server, you can actually use this free download tool to back up your database to the cloud as well. Okay, so that's backup to the cloud using previous version of SQL Server. Okay, let me disconnect here. Go back to my slide. Okay, so let me do a quick recap on this three. All those different backups that I showed to you all has the benefits of Azure storage. It means that very easily integrated. You will save on storage administration. You don't have to worry about co-location, backup media, and things like that. You don't have to worry about your disaster recovery scenario. You don't have to worry about offsite and everything because Azure is your offsite. And we automatically keep 3 copies, so you will not lose the data. And if you encrypt it, even though the copy, let's say, is being stolen by someone, they will not be able to open the database files without the certificate. The managed backup is very good because you don't have to worry about setting it up many times. You don't have to worry about scheduling. You don't have to worry about new databases that are being added to the instance because it's automatically being backed up. If you back up manually, you can obviously control the time and when. You can do a schedule and all that. The backup for the backup tool for prior version of SQL Server, we support all versions of SQL Server out there today. Right? So whether you're running 2005, 2008, 2008 R2, 2012, or 2014, we got you covered for backup to Azure storage. So I highly encourage you to try it out as a way for you to back up your database. Okay. All right. The next one is always-on replica in Azure. Always-on is it's a high availability disaster recovery scenario that we ship in SQL Server 2012. And we enhanced it in SQL Server 2014 in many areas. One of them is in allowing us to have the replica in Azure. Right? So no longer you need to have a disaster recovery scenario that you have to set it up yourself. You can use Azure as your disaster recovery site. And you can have your secondary in Azure, running in the virtual machine in Azure. It will save you a lot of money to set up the disaster recovery site. And when a lot of the CIO in companies, their eyes light up because they will see cost saving and all that, unnecessary hardware purchases that is not needed anymore. So you can fill over your database quickly to Azure in the case of disaster scenario, and then you can repair and you can fill over back to your main location, which is on-prem. Right? So in this case, your primary database still exists in your on-prem on your own data center. It's just the secondaries exist in Azure. Right? It's very easy to set up. We allow you to have a wizard. We ship with a wizard and let you to add replica just like you did before in SQL Server 2012. Right? The next feature that I want to talk about is if you want to deploy your database that are running on your own data center to Azure VM, another SQL Server that's running on Azure VM, we have a very good wizard that allows you to do that. It hides all the complexity. It hides all the things behind the scene that needs to be done. Essentially, it's doing a backup and restore to the Azure VM. Right? To show you in the demo scenario, let me quickly switch to this screen. Disconnect from here. So I can connect to my...
Damari, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah, just letting you know that we have about 7 minutes left, so
yep.
Just to make sure we keep on time, and we've got a few questions as well.
Yep. All right, let me quickly do this demo. I can connect to my SQL Server that's running on Azure VM. And I'll show you the wizard quickly on this to transfer the database back to the Azure VM. So if you look at it, I can quickly move, let's say, AdventureWorks. Under tasks, there's a deploy database to Windows Azure VM. It will bring up a wizard here. So I click next, and I can connect to my source SQL Server and select the right database that I want to move. And then it will go and list the Azure VM that I have using the certificate, the publishing profile that I download from Azure. And it will ask me which VM that I want to move that to. I want to move that to the one that I show here, which is Dharmati K101. So I select that. And then put in the right storage account. And then I need to connect to that VM. What's going on behind the scene is in the Azure VM that's running SQL Server, there is a cloud adapter service that's running behind the scene that's doing this communication. And then I just need to click finish, and this will continue. It will basically deploy my database to the Azure VM. It'll take about a minute to deploy. Essentially what it's doing in the background is is backing up my local database and then transfer the backup files to the Azure storage, and then it will restore it on the Azure storage to the Azure VM. Right. So I'm not going to wait too much on this. It's going to take maybe another minute to finish, but because of time, I'm just going to skip this one. And let me essentially move to the few slides. I'm not going to be able to cover a few slides here because of time. I want to make sure that we have time to do Q&A. Let me scroll this quickly. What I want to cover at the end is, before I turn into the Q&A, is this complete and consistent data platform using SQL Server technology that runs across your on-prem, your private cloud, as well as Microsoft Cloud. It's using one same technology that gives you the same development tool, management tool, the identity, and virtualization. Essentially, we bring the cloud to you rather than you have to go and learn and all that stuff. We bake a lot of the SQL Server to the cloud functionality inside SQL Server Management Studio. So hopefully you see a lot of those, and you see that we continue to enhance that in even the next version of SQL Server. We are right now in the planning phase of that as well. That will bake into a lot of the cloud features inside SQL Server. With that, we turn it back to Julie for Q&A.
Okay, thanks, Damari. That was a really good session. Okay, so I'll just read off a few questions here. The first one is relating to the buffer pool extension. Can we use the buffer pool extension on a local SSD similar to TempDB in a high availability cluster?
You can use local disk anywhere you want to, but essentially the buffer pool extension doesn't know if you're actually using SSD drive or regular drive. You have to make that distinction yourself to make sure that the buffer pool extensions point to the drive that are very, very fast.
Okay, no worries. All right, we'll move on to the next one, which is, so if a pool is configured for, say, max CPU or I/O or memory to 50%, if the system is idle, will it get 100% or just get 50% even if nothing else is running?
You're talking about the resource governor, right?
Yeah, the resource governor.
Yeah, so you can set it in multiple ways. If you do a minimum and maximum, right? If you cap it, let's say, to 50%, even though the system is idle, there's nobody is using it, you still got capped to that max.
Okay, excellent. Right. And the next one we have here, does Smart Admin Backup have options to specify full copy-only log backups to cloud?
The Smart Backup, or we call it Managed Backup, is fully automatic, and we don't allow you to tweak a lot of the actual backup artifacts. So everything is done automatically behind the scene, and it's only good for few scenarios that I'll talk about, the one that doesn't have a DBA involvement. So you just issue the command one time, and it will just back it up automatically for you. If you want to have full control on how things are done, I would suggest that you use the regular, the manual backup tool to the cloud.
Okay, and just one last question. What was the application used for SQL load test utility? I think that was towards the beginning of the session.
Oh, the one that I used for the buffer pool extension is just a simulator. It's not actually a running program. It's based on the numbers that we saw in the lab. In order to test it yourself, the best way to test is if you run SQL Server on the regular disk, and you set the max memory to certain things, and it just run out of memory, and it's just starting to page on the disk. You see slowdown on performance, and then you turn on the buffer pool extension to extend it to SSD drive. You'll see dramatic improvement on query performance. That's how you actually test it. We don't have the environment here to test it. That's why I use that simulator.
Okay, excellent. I think that wraps up the Q&A portion. Now, because of time, now if we have more questions to send to you, do you have a website or anything like that that you can post the answers to?
You can always email to me, darmadi.como@microsoft.com, if you have more questions.
Okay, excellent. All right. Thank you so much, Damari, for a great session. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and hope to see you in another session, in another 24 hours of our session. Thank you.